Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be building a Buy Me a Coffee dApp. Basically a very simple tipping app that will allow someone to send us a tip in cryptocurrency, and they can leave a message and we will be able to display that message and see who it's from. Now we're going to cover a few things in this video. The first thing we're going to do is build our very own custom Buy Me a Coffee smart contract. We're then going to deploy that contract and we're going to create a web app for it so we can then interact with this contract and other people can leave us tips and messages. But we'll also take that same smart contract and build a mobile app, a Web3 mobile app using the mobile SDK, and we'll build that app to be able to interact with the same smart contract. So before we get started, let me show you a demo of what we're going to be building. Right now I am on my computer. This is the app that we're going to build. So it's a Buy Me a Coffee. You can see here it will display the total amount of coffees that we have. Currently we have 3. You can see the 3 messages right here on the right hand side of the message and who it is from. And in order to buy a coffee, so a coffee to tip, you have to purchase it for 0.01 ETH. You can put the name, so I'm just going to put Sean here, and you can leave a little message, and I'm just going to put another coffee for me. And we can then buy that. It's going to open up a transaction. We have to confirm that transaction. We can see here that the buy coffee transaction went through. And once it completes, if we come back to our app here, it updates. We now have 4 coffees, and you can see here, this is the message that we just left, another coffee for me from Sean. And not only will we be creating this web app here, we'll also be creating a mobile version. So this is my phone right here, and you can see that we have our recent messages down at the bottom, and we can also type in a name. I'm just going to put in my last name, and we're going to put another one, and we can buy this tip here. It's going to open up our MetaMask. It's going to ask us to confirm this transaction. So we're going to hit confirm. And you can see we now have 5 coffees, both on our mobile app and on our web app here. And we have another one and another one right there on our recent messages. So without wasting time, let's get started and let's create our smart contract first. All right, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to open up my terminal here. I'm going to do npx third web. And I'm going to do create contract, and we're going to create our Buy Me a Coffee smart contract. Now my project name, I'm just going to put coffee demo here, and we're just going to set it up with hard hat. And my new contract name, I will say call it the Buy Coffee. Now we're going to use an empty contract for this. We're going to create this completely from scratch, but if you ever do want to create your very own smart contracts, you can select from ERC 721.20 and 1155, and you can also choose different extensions that you want as well after selecting these. But in this case, we're going to use an empty contract here. We're going to let it install everything. And once that is done, we'll just change into our coffee demo directory here. And I'm going to open this up in my code editor. Okay, and in my code editor on the left hand side here under the contracts folder, I have my contract right over here. We have an empty contract. I'm gonna just get rid of everything. So we're going to create a 256 that's going to store, this variable is going to store our total coffees. Under that, we're going to also set the owner. So this is going to be an address, and this is going to be a payable address. It will be public, and this is going to be, the owner. We're then going to set up our constructor here, and our constructor is going to be payable. And we are going to set the owner to whoever deploys this contract. Next thing we're going to do is create an event. So an event is going to, every time someone buys a coffee, so we'll name this new coffee. Every time a new coffee is created, we're going to create an event on the blockchain. And using this event, we'll be able to pull things like the message that was sent and the information. So we can do address, and we can put indexed from, so we can get the address of who sent it, the wallet address. We can also store the timestamp of when this happened. We can also store a string because they are going to be able to send us a message. So we'll also record that message, and we'll also put a string for the name, and they can leave like an actual name instead of it just being their wallet address. And that, again, that event will happen every time someone buys a coffee. We can record this and log it on the blockchain. The next thing we're going to do is create a struct for our coffee here. And this is going to have the address here, which is going to be the sender. We have a string here that we're going to store our message. We're going to have a string for the name, and we have a UINT 256 for the timestamp. So again, this is just a structure. Ooh, coffee. Let me spell that right. This is just a struct of what our coffee is going to look like. Now we also want to be able to keep track of our coffees. So we're just going to create an empty array right now and name it coffee. And we're going to create a function here called get all coffee. This function is going to be public and be able to view, and returns our coffee array right here. And that is just going to return coffee. And what this function will do is allow us to get all the coffees that are going to be stored right here in this array. The next function we're going to create is the total coffee function. And the total coffee function is going to return this total coffee that we created at the very top. And every time someone tips us a coffee, that is going to increment. So getting the total coffee is just going to get us back what that number is that we have stored. All right. And then the next thing we're going to do is create our function for buying a coffee. Now this function here is going to take a message and a name. So if you remember our app that we showed in the beginning, someone can put and leave a message, and they can also put in a name. Now this function is a payable function, and we are going to make it public. In our function, we're going to require that whoever is calling the function has to pay the 0.01 ETH, and that is no less, no more. We're going to make sure that we hard code in the 0.01 when we create our app. We're also going to increment the coffee total by 1. That is going to increase and keep track of our total coffees that we have been tipped. We're also going to create a new coffee and push that to our array of coffees. And in there, we're going to, again, pass the address, the message, the name, and the timestamp. So if we look at our struct here, again, the address, message, name, and timestamp. And we're just adding that into our array right over here. And next, we're going to send the funds to the owner. So using this right here, we can do owner.call. The value, which is going to be the value, and we're going to put that into our apps button. So we'll be able to pass the 0.01 ETH for that, for whoever is making the call on this function, and it requires that this function is successful, and if not, it'll give us the error that it failed to send the ether to the owner, and it won't go through. And then the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to emit that event. So once everything goes through, we're going to put an event on the blockchain with that new coffee. It's going to display who the sender was, the timestamp, the message, and the name. So again, if we come back up here, this event, we are going to put that event on the blockchain, and with Third Web, we can actually, and that way we can see on our contract what events have happened. And that does it for our smart contract for this Buy Me a Coffee app. Now we're going to deploy this smart contract. So I'm going to open up my terminal here, and I'm going to type in npx Third Web deploy. It's going to compile our contract here, upload the contract data, and it should open up our web browser to a page where we can then deploy our contract through Third Web. If you don't get this browser opened up, it's going to have the URL here that you can open up. So if you don't get the browser pop up, just copy that URL or go to that URL right there. Over here, we're going to be able to select the network or chain we want to deploy to. I'm going to use the Gurley testnet for this example. I'm going to hit deploy now and confirm this transaction. We're going to just sign this to add it to our dashboard. And once it has been deployed, we're brought to our contract dashboard here. Now this overview is going to have the overview of our contract. So you can see here the latest events. Right now, it's not going to show anything because we haven't interacted with this contract yet. Under the build tab here, you're going to have some code snippets that you can copy to get started building out your Web3 application. Down here, you'll see the different languages. So you get JavaScript, React Native, Web3 button, which is what we're going to be a UI component we're going to be using to interact with the smart contract. You have those code snippets right over there as well. Under your Explorer, we can see we have our write function, which is buy me a coffee. We have our read function, so we can get all coffees. Right now it is empty. We can get total coffees. Right now it is 0 because we don't have any total, we don't have any coffees yet. And we will also view the owner, which is our wallet address that we deployed with. But let's go on over to the Explorer and let's test out buying coffee. So for our message here, we're going to just put first coffee, and the name, I'm just going to put Watase here. And for the native token value, this is actually the value that we have to pass. So this is going to be the 0.01. Now, cool thing with third web here is this is normally you have to normally put this value in way, but with our contract explorer here and being able to execute your write functions, you can actually put in the native currency value. So you can put in the value in ethers and you can use decimals and everything. Normally you would have to convert it to way and put in the correct value, but you can put in 0.01, and third web, we will convert it for you when you execute the transaction. So let's put that through. We have to just confirm this transaction here. And you can see the transaction went through, and we can check first. Let's check our events here. You can see we just have a new event right here, our new coffee. And if we look at new coffee here, we can see the address, the wallet address it was sent from, the timestamp, our message, and the name of whoever sent the message. Now, if we come back to Explorer, let's go to our read here. We can get all coffee. You can see that we now have one coffee in here, and we'll be able to get that information. We can get the total coffees right now, which is 1. Owner is still our wallet address. So we now know that our Buy Me a Coffee smart contract works. The next thing we need to do is build our web app and our mobile app. We're going to build is our web app first, and we'll then jump into building our mobile app with our brand new mobile SDK. And in mobile SDK, we'll actually be using React Native. So you'll be able to see how the React hooks that we use for our web app and our mobile SDK are very similar, and how you can still interact and build applications very easily on both platforms. So let's get started with the web app first. Okay, now let's build our web app first. I'm going to open up terminal here. Let's just zoom in a bit so everyone can see. And in my terminal, I'm going to create our web app. So I'm going to use npx third web, and I'm going to do create and then app. And this is going to allow us to create a third web app. I'm going to name this coffee web. I spelled coffee wrong, that's okay. EVM, and we're going to use Next.js and TypeScript for this project here. And once that's done, I'm going to switch into the coffee web project folder here. Make sure I spelled my error spelling right. And I'm going to first install Chakra UI. This way I can just make my project here, this demo, look nice and pretty. So I'm just going to yarn add Chakra UI to my project really quick. And once that is done, I'm going to open this up in my code editor. And let me just zoom in so we can see what we're working with here. Okay, so this is the project. I'm first going to go into the pages folder and go to the _app.tsx file here. And I'm going to switch the active chain to go early because that's the chain that we deployed our smart contract to. I'm also going to import Chakra provider here and set up my project so that I can use Chakra. Okay, and that does it for our app.tsx file here. I'm going to jump into the index.tsx file, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get rid of this template code here. Just take that stuff out, and I'm going to fill it with a container from Chakra. and get rid of this style sheet because I don't need that in this project. Okay, now the thing we're going to do is get our contract address. I'm going to store our contract address here. So I'm going to get our contract address from our contract here on our contract dashboard. I'm just going to copy that address, come back here, paste that in, and we're going to get our contract so that we can start interacting with it. So ThirdWeb has a hook called use contract. And what use contract is going to do is allow us to just pass our contract address here, and we'll then be able to access the data from our contract. We'll be able to interact with it and pull whatever information or execute whatever functions we need to from our contract. So a couple of things we are going to get from our contract are the total coffees and the most recent coffees. So the list of recent coffees. And in order to do that, so we'll do total coffees. In order to get total coffees, we're going to use a hook called use contract read. And what use contract read allows us to do is call any read function on a contract. So right here, we're going to pass our contract that we just got right here. And then we're going to put in the name of the function, the read function that we want to call from the contract. And what I mean by that is if we come back to our contract dashboard here and we go to Explorer, and we have our write functions and then we have our read functions, and our read functions are, if we run get total coffee, right now we have 1 because we have that 1 coffee we tested earlier. So this is going to return this 1 right over here because we're going to get total coffees. Getting all coffees is going to return our array of coffees, and we have our 1 coffee that we put in earlier, which was our first coffee here, and that is what would be returned for this recent coffees. So that's some of the information we're going to need. I'm also going to add at the very top here just address, and we're going to use something called use address, which is another hook from ThirdWeb. And use address checks if there's any wallet connected to our app, and if there is, it'll store that wallet address under address right over here. So for our app, let's start building it out. I have some code here. Let me just add those in. I'm gonna start building our app here. We have our container. I'm setting a max width of 1200 pixels and setting the width to full. Within that container, we're just gonna create like a little nav bar first. So I'm gonna create a flex using the flex tag from Chakra. I'm justifying the content to have space between and aligning the items center, setting the padding on the top and bottom to 20 pixels and setting the height of the navigation bar to 80 pixels. And in there, we're going to have kind of just a logo or a title that says buy me a coffee, and we're going to have our connect wallet button. So I'm going to save this. Let's open up our terminal here. Let's run yarn dev, and let's open this up here and let's take a look at it. We're in our local host right now, so we have again our little title buy me a coffee on the left hand side here, and we have a connect wallet button, and we can then connect our wallet right there to our site. Just disconnect it for now. Next thing I'm going to add under our little nav bar here is a simple grid, and this simple grid is we're going to put 2 columns with 10 spacing in between, and we're going to just give it a little bit of a margin on the top of 40 pixels. And this is going to be the 2 columns. The left hand side is going to be for people to fill out the form to buy a coffee, and then the right hand side will show our most recent messages that were sent. On one side, we are going to create, I'm just going to create a box here. And in that box, we're going to create a card. And in that card, we're just going to have the title of buy a coffee. So if we save that and view our app, we can see we have our card on the left hand side and it says buy a coffee. So in here, we're going to add some input fields and a button for someone to purchase and tip us a coffee. And again, on the right hand side, on this side, we will have the recent messages. So under our buy a coffee title, we're gonna add a section that shows our total coffees, and it's going to be a flex. We're going to make the direction a row so that it stacks left to right. And in there, we're going to again say total coffees, and we're going to use a skeleton from Chakra UI. It's just a loading placeholder, and we're going to use is loaded. So it's going to check if we're still loading the total coffees. So up here in our total coffees, it'll allow us to check if we are still getting the data needed for total coffees. And if we are still getting it, it's going to show our skeleton placeholder. And if it is not loading anymore, it is going to show our total coffees, which is what we grabbed right here. And we're going to use the toString to change it into a string to display that. Now I did add a width of 20 pixels and a margin left of 5 pixels to this skeleton. So just to show you what it looks like here, you can see it displays total coffees 1, but if I refresh the page, it'll show a little loading skeleton and then display our total amount of coffees. All right, and then under that, within the same card still, we're going to add our input fields. And our input fields are going to have titles, which are going to be text. I increased the font size to 2XL and added a padding on the top and bottom of 10 pixels. And we're also going to create an input from Chakra UI, and the placeholder will be John Doe. The max length is going to be 16 characters. We're setting the value of this to name, and we're going to create an onChange function that will handle the name change in here. And we're doing something very similar to for the message section. So we have a title of message. Our input here, placeholder is just saying hello. Max length is going to be set to 80. Our value for this will be message, and we'll create an onChange function of handling the message change. We'll actually just comment this out for now. And back in our app, we can see we have a name where we can fill out our name here, and then we have message where we can fill out our message in here. Next thing we need to do is create a button that is going to allow us to submit the buy a coffee. And we're going to add that right under our inputs. So I'm going to first create a box here that is going to hold our button. We're going to give that box a little margin on the top of 20 pixels. And in that box, what we're first going to do is, so if I add a Web3 button right now, and we're just going to have it say, buy a coffee, and then 0.01 E. And if we go back to our app, you can see that the button is here, but it shows connect wallet. And the only reason it shows that is because we can't interact with a Web3 button unless we have a wallet connected. So it's going to prompt us to connect a wallet first. The only thing is we have a connect wallet up here in the top right, and we also have one down here where the button should be. So instead of showing it twice, what we're going to do is in our box here, we're going to make sure that we have our address. Because again, if we do have an address, it means a wallet is connected. And if we don't have an address, it means a wallet is not connected to our site. So if we do have an address, we'll show the Web3 button. And if we don't have an address, we'll just show some text that says, please connect your wallet. So you can see back in our app here, it'll show, please connect your wallet here. We'll just have to come on up to the top right, connect our wallet. And when we have our wallet connected, then it'll show our button. Now it's not going to load anything because we haven't fully set up our Web3 button yet, but that is what we will do right now. So the Web3 button, we need a minimum of 2 things. We do need the contract address that the Web3 button is going to interact with. And then we need to set an action of what is this button actually going to do. So this button right here on our contract is going to call a function, and it's going to call our write function of buy coffee. So on here, we're going to do contract, and we're going to call a function, and the function that we're going to call is buy coffee. So if we come back to our contract here really quick under our write, we're going to call this buy coffee function. And there are 3 things we need to make sure our buy coffee function takes is 1, the message, 2, the name, and then we have the payable amount of 0.01 E, which we are going to set up. So we're going to call the a buy coffee function here. We have our 2 arguments that we need to pass, and then we have our value here, which we are going to set to the 0.01 E. Our 2 arguments that we are going to take, the first one is messages. So we'll do message. The second one is name. So we'll pass name. And then for the value, we're going to set the value to ethers.utils.parse ether, and then we're going to pass the 0.01. We'll also make sure that we import ethers. So this is going to set the value to 0.01 ETH. It's going to convert that to the necessary amount that we need to pass into our contract. And the message and the name are the message and the name values. So if we actually uncomment this here and this here, those are the 2 values that we are going to set. right here when we call our function. And that does it for the buy coffee side of our app. Now we do need to set a few things. The first things we need to set are being able to get the message and name values. So we're going to create 2 state variables, and we're going to set up our functions to handle the changes to those inputs as well. So I'm going to uncomment those down there. We have our code here. So we have our 2, actually let's import our states here. So we have our 2 state variables that are going to handle message and name. We're going to have our 2 functions that are going to handle the changes for each one and update and handle the state of whatever the value is for our name and message. And then we also are going to create a function called clear value so that once someone submits something on our button here, we can run on success. And this is once someone has successfully through a transaction. What we're going to do is clear values here, and we're going to run the clear values function, which will just set the inputs back to blank inputs, so there will be no value for it. All right, and if we come back to our app here, we now see it says buy a coffee for 0.01 ETH. We have our fields here that we can write our messages and everything in, and we can buy a coffee. I'm not going to do it now. We're going to set up our recent messages first, and then we'll test run and put one through using our web app. So the next thing we need to do is create the right side of our app here, which is going to display the recent messages that people have left because they have bought a coffee from us. So back here in our code, under this box here, we're going to create another box, and this box is going to be for the right hand side of our app that is going to display the recent messages. So I'm setting the card here. We're setting a max height of 60% of the view height. That way it doesn't go on endlessly if we have a lot of messages, and we're setting the overflow to scroll. And right now we're just going to have the card show a title of recent messages. And right over there, we now have our card on the right hand side that shows recent messages. So next thing we need to do is display the messages inside. So we want to make sure that we're going to use at the top here our recent coffees. We're going to make sure that we have loaded the recent coffees and that we have the data first. So what we're going to do here is check if loading recent coffees, if it has loaded. If it hasn't loaded, we're going to just show a stack of skeletons, like loading skeletons. And once it has loaded, we're going to put in that information right here in this box. Now, what we are going to show here is, again, the recent messages. Now, the recent messages is stored in our coffee array. So what we'll have to do is map through our array. And for each coffee in that array, we're going to create a card. So again, we're going to just check if we have recent coffees, and if we do, we're going to map through those coffees, and we're going to save each one under coffee, and we're going to get the index number. And for each coffee that is in our array, we're going to return a card. We're going to set the key to the index. I'm going to set the margin on the top and bottom to 10 pixels, and in that card, we're going to get the second item in the array and the third item in the array. So the second item is the message, and the third item is who it is from, and we'll just put from in the beginning. So if we come back to our contract here and I go to read and I hit get all coffees, our first item in the array, so array item 0, is the contract address that submitted it. The second item is our message, and the third item is who it's from. So again, that is what we're displaying here. Second item is our message, third item is who it is from. And if we come back to our app here, we can now see the first message that we sent earlier is showing right here where it says first coffee, and it shows it is from, and Watase is the name that we put in when we submitted that. And that does it for the web app for our Buy Me a Coffee app. So what we'll do now is test it out. We'll put a name in here. I'm just going to put Sean. The message, I am going to put another coffee for you to enjoy. And we're going to click buy coffee. And what this should do is prompt us a transaction here. We're going to confirm. You can see here we are getting charged the 0.01 ETH, and then we just have to pay the gas on top of that. We'll confirm. And once that transaction goes through, we'll see total coffees increase to 2. We'll see our most recent message appear here in our messages. And then we can take a look at our smart contract dashboard and kind of look at what has happened. And there we go. It has updated to 2 coffees, and we can see another coffee for you to enjoy has been sent by Sean. So our Buy Me a Coffee app is working. Let's take a look at our contract dashboard here. Let's take a look at overview. You can now see that we have a second event that was sent, which was new coffee. If we click on that, you can see the information of that there. We have our message, and then we have the name of who it was sent from. And that does it for our web app. Now, again, we're going to take these same Buy Me a Coffee smart contract, and we're now going to build a mobile app, a Web3 mobile app that's going to work very similar to how our web app works. And we're going to, again, be using the same smart contract. So when we submit or buy a coffee from one app, it should appear on the other app as well, because we are, again, using that same smart contract. Now, the next thing we have to do is build our Web3 mobile app, and we're going to be using Mobile SDK, which we just released, that is going to help you build your Web3 mobile app. So I'm going to come back to my terminal here. Let me just clear this out. So I'm going to run npx third web create --template and react native TypeScript starter. And this is going to create us a React Native TypeScript starter template that is going to have the basic things that we need to get started building our Web3 mobile app. So I'm going to run that. We're going to select our project name. So I'm going to do this time Coffee Mobile, and I'll spell mobile wrong this time, but coffee right. So Coffee Mobile, we'll run that. Going to now install all our packages. This is going to take a bit, so I will come back once this is finished. It has finished here. I'm going to change directory into my Coffee Mobile and open this one up in our code editor. So I have the project that was created for us right here. Now we're going to go first into the app.tsx file, and in there you'll scroll down a little bit. In our third web provider, we have our active chain. It's right now defaulted to Mumbai. We're going to change that to Gurley. And that has set up our ability to now use our smart contract with this mobile app. So I'm going to open up terminal here. I'm actually going to do yarn iOS to run this on the iOS emulator on my device here. And we can take a look at what our app is going to look like as we start to build it. And it looks like I ran into an error here. It looks like it's our pods. So if you do have this error you run into about not having the pods installed for iOS, you can just go into the iOS folder and type in pods install. Oh, sorry, pod install. Never mind, we have to run bundle install here, if I can spell right. So we'll install all of those first, and then we should be able to run our emulator. All right, and now we can do pod install. There we go. And once that has finished, we can go into, Coffee Mobile here, and then we can run yarn iOS to build it on our emulator. And once it is done building the app and building it on your emulator here, you should see we have our templated title and our connect wallet button, and we have the option to connect our wallet to our app. Now on the emulator, you can't connect a wallet because the emulator doesn't have any wallets installed on it. So in the very end, once we have our app designed, we'll then run this on my own personal device, and we'll be able to use the wallets that I have installed there to then connect to our app and run a transaction through. But we're going to use this emulator here to view what we are building on our mobile app. So coming back to our code here, I'm going to drop that terminal down. I am going to delete everything in this view here, and I'm going to just change this height of this view to 50%. And I'm going to duplicate this view here. And our mobile app, if I come back to our emulator here, just really quick, the top half is going to be the buy coffee form that we created like on our web app. And then the bottom half will display the recent messages that we have. What we're going to do is in our project here, we're going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this one buy coffee. I'm going to do buycoffee.tsx, and this is going to be our buy coffee component here. We're just going to import React here, and we're going to then create our coffee component. And for our coffee component, we are going to return, and in here, we're going to right now return a view. And that view, I'm going to give a styles of card, and I'm going to paste in my own styles after this. But of course, you can go and design your app however you want. Okay, and then in our buy coffee, just like our web app, we're going to get the address, and we're going to use the use address hook here to see if a wallet is connected to our mobile app. We're also going to store our contract address under contract address here. So just come here, copy this, paste it in here. And what you're going to start to realize is, because we're using React Native to build our mobile app, a bunch of the React hooks and a bunch of the things that we've used to build our web app are going to be pretty similar in how we use it here in our mobile app. So again, because this one is just getting our total coffees, we're not getting anything else for this one here. We're going to use the use contract to get our contract again. Again, we're just going to pass the contract address, and then we're going to use the use contract read to get the total coffees, which we're going to display under the title of our buy coffee. So in our view here, we're going to create a text, and we're just going to give it the style of title, and it's going to be called buy coffee, just like our web app. Under that, we're going to display the total coffees, and we're going to check if total coffees is loading. If it is loading, we're just going to show some loading text. And once it is done and it has our total coffees, we'll display total coffee, and then we'll grab total coffee, and then we'll use toString to convert it over to a string. Then under that, we're going to create our two input fields for our name and message. So we're gonna again use text, display the name, create a input field that is going to just have a name placeholder, and we're gonna have our value of name, and on change text, we're going to create a function to handle the change on the input right over here. And the same thing goes for messages. We're going to do the same thing except for our message. So if we save that and take a look at our app, well, we see nothing because we come back to our app.tsx file here. In this top view section, we're going to do the buy coffee component that we just made, and we're going to make sure that we import to that. And nothing's going to display because I haven't set my styles that I have set here. So I'm just going to add my styles that I have really quick. And all this is doing here is I've created a variable called styles, which is a style sheet, and I created some styles for the input, the card that we're using, the input title, and the heading, which I need to change this to. It's not title, it's heading. And then we also have the name and values. We're going to just comment that out for now until we set up the functions for those. We just want to make sure everything is working properly. So now if I come back to my app here, we now have our card and we have our two input fields. It's showing us the two coffees that we have already made from previously on our smart contract and then previously in our web app. Now we do need to add a connect wallet button at the very top. So back in our app.tsx, above my coffee component, I'm going to do a connect wallet button, or a connect wallet UI component. And if we scroll up here in the third web provider, you'll see supported wallets. You can put in a list of your supported wallets here. So you can add things like Trust Wallet, you can add Rainbow, you can add Coinbase Wallet, or you can just add something like MetaMask if MetaMask is the only thing you want to support. So if I come back to the app here, we now have a connect wallet button on the top. If I click on connect wallet, it only shows MetaMask because we removed everything else. Now we have to add that button, our Web3 button, to our component here. And that's what we're going to do right now. So on the buy here, again, we're going to check if there is an address connected to our mobile app. And if there is an address, then we will show the Web3 button. If there is no address, we're going to show some text that says, please connect your wallet. If they don't have it, we're going to say, please connect your wallet. And if they do have a wallet connected, then we are going to create our Web3 button. Now, our Web3 button, again, takes our contract address, which we stored up top, and it takes the action that we are going to do. We're again going to, on our contract, call the buy coffee function, and we're going to pass the message and the name, and we're setting the value to let's import ethers here, setting the value to 0.01 ETH. And on success, we're going to clear values of our inputs here so that it resets to blank. Now, the last thing we need for this buy coffee component here is just setting, again, the values and states for our inputs here. So I'm just going to uncomment these, and here we are going to add our states for our message and name, and we're going to create a function that clears the values to blank once someone submits and buys a coffee. So on this on success here, we save that, come back to our app. Right now, it's going to show please connect a wallet, which is what we wanted to display. When we deploy and build this on our actual iOS device, we'll be able to connect a wallet and we should have our button display right over here. So that does it for the buy coffee component. The next component we need to create is going to be for displaying our recent messages. So I'm going to again create a new file here. I'm going to call it recent messages.tsx. And then again, we're going to import React and we are going to create our component here. So we're creating our recent messages. It's going to be another view again. And again, I am creating my own styles here. You can feel free to create whatever styles you want. So the title here is just going to display recent messages. I'm going to just paste in the styles here. So for this one, I am creating a message card, setting some padding and borders around it. We have our message container, our message, the sender of our message, heading, and then setting the container as well. So for this component, we're going to again get our contract address and everything here. I'm just going to import these. And this time we're going to be getting our recent coffees, just like we did in our web app. We're going to get our recent coffees and map through the array of coffees that we have and display each one as a message. So under our recent messages title here, I'm going to create a scroll view. And this scroll view is going to show our messages, and we're just making it a scroll view. So again, you can just scroll through the messages that are there. We're going to check if loading recent coffees. If it's still loading, it's going to show some loading text. And if it's not loading, we're going to map through all of the coffee messages that we have right here. So we're going to get that array of coffees. We're going to map through each one. Each one is going to be a coffee, and we're going to get the index, and what we're going to return is a view, and then we're going to give it a key of the index, and all that view is going to have is a text that is going to show the coffee.message, so the message of the coffee, and we're going to then display from and use coffee.name to display the name. And that does it for our recent message component. If we come back to our app.tsx file here, we're going to put in our recent messages here. And if we come back to our app, you can see right now it is loading our recent messages. Actually, I think if we come back here, I don't think I passed the contract address. Let's paste that contract address right there. And if we come back to our app, you can see we have our 2 messages here. And as more messages come, we can scroll through the different messages. Again, it shows total coffee, so 2, and we have our 2 messages right over here. So everything looks good in our emulator here, but we want to make sure that we can actually connect a wallet and actually put a buy coffee through, and that the transaction actually goes through. So I have my device plugged in, and in our mobile coffee, the folder of our mobile coffee, in the iOS folder, there is a Xcode file. So if you open up that Xcode file, and again, this is going to be for running this on an iOS device. Open that file up. It's going to open up our Xcode. Let me just enlarge this here. Under the React Native starter here, under signing and capabilities, I'm going to switch this to my team here, which is personal. I'm going to add just a website here. And if you don't have this set up, you do just need to create a developer's account through Apple using your Apple ID. And that's going to allow you to then deploy your builds onto an iOS device that you have plugged into your computer. Now, up at the top, I'm going to go to product. Under destination, I'm going to make sure that my iOS device here is selected. You can see right here that that is where your build is going to go to. And once that is set, you can run your build. Let me pull up on my phone here though really quick. So I have my phone here, and what I'm going to do next is build and run this to my device. And once you build your app, you're probably going to see this untrusted developer message pop up on your device. So you just go to your settings under general, and under VPN and device management, you'll see your developer app, and you just need to trust that. And then you can come back. I moved the app to my home screen, and we can open it up, and we can come back to Xcode and just run it one more time. And then this time it will boot up our app, and it should load our app here. Let me just turn off dark mode, and there we have it. We have our app with our messages here at the bottom, and then we can again type in our name. So I can just say Sean, and then we'll just type in mobile coffee. Again, I can't send it because I need to connect the wallet first. So we tap connect wallet at the top. We'll select the MetaMask. And once in our MetaMask, it's going to ask us to connect. So we'll connect. And at the very top, you can see that our wallet is connected, and our button now shows buy for 0.01 ETH. Now I'm going to, on my desktop here, open up our mobile app or our web app as well, so we can look at our two apps. Currently they're showing again that same information. I'm going to just again put my name. I'm going to say mobile coffee here, and we're going to put buy for 0.01 ETH. It should take us back into our MetaMask app and prompt us with the transaction. Again, it's charging us 0.01. We will confirm. It's going to bring us back to our app, but I'm going to switch on back to our MetaMask app here. We'll check out the activity. Looks like it's been submitted right over here. And once that transaction goes through, we can go back to our app. We can check out our web app here, and both should update with our brand new message. And once the transaction is complete, you can see here our web app has updated to 3, and we have our mobile coffee right over there. We can come back to our mobile app here, and our mobile app has also updated to 3 coffees, and we now have our most recent message right over there. And there you have it. We created our very own Buy Me a Coffee smart contract, and using that smart contract, we built our very own web app and mobile app that allowed us to interact and allow people to send us messages and coffee tips. And we built both apps using ThirdWeb and our brand new mobile SDK from ThirdWeb. If you folks did enjoy this video and you found some value in it, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on more videos just like this. And if you haven't already joined our Discord and joined the amazing community of builders just like yourself, we'll leave a link down in the description below. If you need any help or you need any support on anything that we've gone over, we'll be happy to help you out there. But again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something valuable, and until next time, see ya.